My name is Brent Bateman. I'm so glad to be here. This session, which I know a lot of you have already heard me speak and have already heard me give a session similar to this. This session is called Ask Brent Whatever You Want, and it really is that. My job, I'm the State Property Rights Ombudsman. I work for the state of Utah. And one of the things I do, the main thing I do actually, is people call me when they have problems or disputes with government over their land. Okay, and I have to talk to them all the time, and I get asked every question there is under the sun. I love it when I get asked a new question. It does occasionally happen. Here's what we're going to do. I put this slide up not because I just use one slide, and it's usually this slide, and I always make changes to it. But I put this slide up because it just sort of refreshes our mind about some specific topics of land use law. We can look up there and, you know, we may not be thinking about anything, but we can look up there and say, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, I meant to ask somebody about that. So let's talk about that. So this is just sort of a refresher. We can go over all of it if you want. We can go over any part of it that you want to, or we can talk about anything else. But here's the point where we either decide we're either going to have questions or tell more jokes. So what do you want to talk about?
Salt Lake County has a really good ordinance regarding short-term rentals because they have all these properties on the canyons. So they have it listed as conditional use with development standards, stuff like that. Okay. So I recommend to go take a look at that one.
Yeah, and that's really good. Even the short-term rental issue, a lot of places have them as conditional uses. And the problem that I'm seeing is a lot of places have had them as conditional uses for a while. And now that it's become popular to do, now that Airbnb has become a thing, people are taking them off their conditional use list and making them prohibited uses. Because why? Because they're sick and tired of going to planning commission meeting and having a lineup all the way out the door of people telling me that if you allow short-term rentals in our community, you're going to reduce my property values and the children are going to be in danger. Right? Yes, sir.
How did Salt Lake City handle this issue during the 2002 Winter Olympic Games?
That's a great question.
Because there were tons of people that moved, stayed with relatives and rented out their homes because they could make more money doing that on a short-term rental.
That's a great question. Do you know the answer to that?
When I was at Salt Lake City, I know the city's ordinance did not really address short-term rentals. And my guess is it didn't during the time of the Olympics either, which means they probably just didn't do anything about it.
Right. And as I'm sure Wilf will discuss, here's the status for short-term rentals as far as I can tell. There's a big push up at the legislature this year to prohibit you from prohibiting short-term rentals. And that didn't pass, but there's going to be a lot more discussion. We'll just leave that to Wilf going forward. So, but right now they're allowed, and if you want to prohibit them, you can prohibit them. Now here's the thing that I've been hearing a lot. Most codes have a list of things that are permitted and a list of things that are conditional, and then has a statement saying if it's not listed as permitted or conditional, it's prohibited. Most codes have that, okay? This whole short-term rental thing has called some of that into question, okay? My personal feeling is that Brown versus Sandy City, which is what calls it into question, does not invalidate those codes. That statement that if it's not permitted, it's prohibited, okay? And here's the reason why. Brown versus Sandy City is an old case. It's been around for a couple of decades about short-term rentals before short-term rentals was even a thing. It came from the Olympics. And these folks in Sandy wanted to rent out their house to some people who wanted to come and ski or whatever, okay? And the neighbors didn't like it, as usually happens, and there was a big lawsuit. And what the court said, what Sandy City said is they said, look, we have this statement that says if it's not permitted or conditional, it's prohibited. We're relying on that. So thus, short-term rentals are prohibited. And the court said, no, that's not true, okay? You're right, it doesn't say short-term rentals, but it does say in your code that residential uses are permitted. Residential uses are permitted, and a short-term rental is a residential use. Thus, it's permitted. You don't have, it's not, it's general, it's general to the details, not details to general, okay? If you have residential use in your, according to this ruling, which is still in effect, if you have residential use in your zone and you have not specifically permitted short-term rentals or any other type of residential use, they're allowed in your zone. Okay, so that goes to your question, and that's why Will said no. Because, you know, you don't say short-term rentals, but you can't assume that means it's prohibited because other types of rentals and residential uses are permitted. And it's what you're generally permitting, which is gonna carry the day.
I think what the judge was alluding to was that you allow houses to be rented long-term in your community, and that's residential. So what's the difference if it's just rented for 30 days? It's still a rental.
That's exactly right. So what they're doing here, you're allowing in other ways. Just because you haven't specifically said short-term rentals doesn't mean it's prohibited. So, yes, sir.
Does that go for homeowners associations if they have their own little set of rules?
That's the great thing about homeowners associations is they get to create their own little set of rules. Their homeowners associations rules are based on contract, not on law. Okay, and so they make their CC&Rs and everything, and they put just about anything in their CC&Rs, including things that they wouldn't be able to put in, you know, by law they wouldn't be able to put in, but they put it in their CC&Rs, and then when you buy a home in a homeowner association, you are deemed to have entered into that contract. Okay, so yeah, if your homeowners association says no rentals or limits the number of rentals or whatever, they can enforce that, but they don't enforce it through the law. They enforce that through contract. And so if you go ahead and rent outside of that, they bring a breach of contract lawsuit against you.
But it's got to be in their covenants, right?
It's got to be there. It's got to be in their covenants. So yeah, but those kind of restrictions on rentals and stuff like that in general, they're no problem. If you want to specifically, right now, if you want to specifically state short-term rentals are not allowed here, you can do that. And right now, I think that will fly. I don't know if that's going to continue to be the case in the future. We'll talk about that's the magic part. So there you go. Yes, ma'am.
Right now in Francis, we have a very specific Affordable Housing Act. And I know it's called moderate housing now. But anyways, we're in the process of revising that. And I wondered if maybe you could maybe pass around some ideas. I would really like some more input, just of some things that have worked in other communities.
You asked an interesting question, and I would like to hear what other people have to say. The major fallacy in what you suggested is when you said some things that have worked in other communities. Does anybody know of anything that's worked in other communities?
Linden City and Highland City both have something that's pretty unique as far as that goes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Accessory apartments are legal in almost anywhere, and they'll spot zone a duplex almost in any neighborhood. And they do that because if they don't, they won't have, they won't meet the affordable housing guidelines, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac underwritten and FHA underwritten financing goes away for the community.
That's great. What kind of thing are you planning in Francis as far as this goes?
Well, we just have to have something, you know, written. Right now, it's basically a percentage rate. So if you have 0 to 10 units, there's no affordable housing. If it's like, you know, 11 to 30, then you have to have so many restricted lots or maybe less of acreage. Sure. So it's very restrictive like that, and we have quite a bit of we feel affordable housing that's being built right now, so we're just kind of trying to make it a little more vague and not put us right to the letter of the law. Okay.
So how are you maintaining the affordability restrictions? What are you doing? Are you recording something against the properties?
We do have, in one subdivision, we have 4 deed restricted lots that are on a smaller acreage, and when they have like a certain time period that they have to live in the house, and then once they sell it, they can only make like 3%, so they can keep those affordable. So basically, anytime a subdivision comes in, you're supposed to look at how many lots go in and then give them a percentage, say, oh, well, it looks like you have a 30-lot subdivision. You need 2 of these to be affordable housing.
Interesting. I like the idea, too, of, though, of allowing accessory apartments everywhere, but I know politically that can be a nightmare.
In Pleasant Grove, we just went through that and created an accessory apartment ordinance. It's kind of my fault, but
your fault or your credit?
It depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
I know Provo City has done something really similar with some deed restrictions and limited amounts of profit
coming off the back end of it and things like that. My personal opinion is just increase the density to the point where it's affordable. Because as a real estate broker, selling those things off the back end is extremely complex, and you're holding values down in a weird way that, I mean, it's like, how do you even find the right affordable housing? It's like rent control in New York. It's nuts.
Sure. Will, if you're holding a microphone, what's your experience?
I've got a lot of experience directly with affordable housing, but I agree with the comment. It's a weird way to try to hold down the value, and it really complicates things. And in the end, after a while, they wind up going up anyway.
Yeah,
And then you don't have affordable housing anymore.
that's right.
And, accessory dwelling units, I really think that's a good way to increase affordable housing, because generally they rent for a lot less than normal apartments do if they're rented or people live there. But it can be really tough to get through in a community to allow for accessory units. The interesting thing is they exist everywhere. Yeah. Most neighborhoods seem to have one or two at least around, and so it just seems to be there's this resistance to making them legal.
Could I just add some resources for you for housing for everybody? There's a couple at the state. They're in the Housing and Community Development. I think they've recently changed the name, but they're mandated to assist you in your housing element. And there's also a resource with Vision Utah. There's a toolkit on affordable housing strategies. And in the Summit County area, there's Mountain Lands Community Housing. So, and I'm sure there might be housing agencies or others in your region.
Next. Anything else?
Different topic though. Okay, residential facilities for people with a disability.
We love that subject.
And certain jurisdictions require a buffer between some of them and stuff like that. So I'd like to know something about that. Recovering from an addiction, is that a disability?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Halfway house, yep.
So
Absolutely.
just to be clear then, there should be permitted uses in residential zones.
Now, don't address them at all.
Yeah, that is the thing. If there's anything in your code that discusses these, take it out, including things like buffer zones, where they can be located, what kind of parking, anything like that, take it out, because that is a lost lawsuit.
Treat them on a case-by-case basis when they come to your community.
Okay.
Will, elaborate on that. What do you mean, don't say anything?
Just don't address it in your ordinance. Don't have anything in your ordinance that says
Don't have a
anything
special
about
rule.
recovery, group homes, anything.
And then just deal with them
Case by case.
individually. But we can't say no.
Well, there are certain things you can do, but it really depends on the circumstances of the particular home.
The principle is that those uses are residential uses. They're not commercial uses. They're residential uses. And anything you do to treat those people and those facilities different from every other residence in the community is discrimination. Okay? Which is why you'll lose the lawsuit. Okay? So, you can prohibit them as long as you prohibit all residences. If you say people cannot live here, then fine, you can't put a group home here. But if you allow people to live there, if you allow residential uses there, you have to allow those under the same, well, not even under the same circumstances, but yeah, you have to apply everything. And you cannot even say, when they come along, you cannot even say, well, you have to have extra parking, or you have to have extra landscaping, unless you're going to say that to every other residence in the same zone. You have to treat them exactly like every other residence. And then on top of that, on top of treating them like every other residence, you have to make reasonable accommodations for them, which means that not only do they get treated like everybody else, but they get treated better.
So, Brent, if our definitions of group homes do not include recovering addicts, are we wrong?
If you have definitions in your code of group homes, I would remove them.
Just get them out. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that's going to bring more people to more angry people to Planning Commission than this.
And I would recommend, I'd say when you get, don't have anything in your ordinance about it. When you get one, treat it on a case-by-case basis, and as soon as you get one, go talk to your attorney.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're talking about walking a very nasty legal tightrope right up front. You not only do you have to treat them like everybody else, you have to give them reasonable accommodations. And if you don't do those things, you're talking about losing millions and millions of dollars in a lawsuit, because that's what's always happened. Those lawsuits, I mean, people, there's the kind of lawsuits that bankrupt cities. And people line up at planning commission meeting and they scream at you and they tell you all sorts of horrible things that are going to happen and stuff like that. And all of that may be true, and it doesn't matter. If you're going to put any restriction on them, you have to put the same restriction on every other citizen.
Brent, you said they get treated better, and that is true, because what they'll do is they'll ask for a reasonable accommodation. And
they might get their 4. Or they might get their 8 or their 10 or whatever.
Exactly. They'll usually ask for more. And you've got to have a really good reason for turning down something that doesn't look reasonable.
Yep.
In the subdivision I live in, they have 2 of these, and they have employees there. They have a van. I mean, is it more like a business?
Uh-huh. It acts like a business, but under the ADA, it's a residence. It's a residential use. You cannot classify it as a commercial use. Even though it's a business, even though there's employees, it's a residential use under the ADA. So, this is not a battle to get in, guys. The whole point of this is not a battle to get in. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people who ran for city council on the platform of, I'm going to stop this from happening. And they won on that platform. They're going to stop this from happening. And it's a disaster. If someone comes with a group home application, you smile, you nod, you say, welcome to our city, and you call your attorney. And that's it. That's it. Do not get into this fight.
Hey, Brent, what if it's a group home for recovering sex offenders?
Same.
We had an application for one of those come in. We just didn't know how to treat it.
Same.
Same thing.
Same.
There's no flexibility of the jurisdiction because of the registered sex offender or recovering sex.
I mean, this is why I say call your attorney, and hopefully your attorney will call one of the 3 or 5 attorneys in the state who has a lot of experiences with this, and that attorney might be able to somehow split hairs with the ADA and find something there, okay? But as far as you're concerned, same. Don't do anything different.
Just your feelings on impact fees, because I've heard it both ways. One, are they legal, and when they aren't? A lot of people can rationalize why they assess those fees.
My feelings on impact fees.
Turn off the camera. No.
I know, right? I'm going to put it this way. There's a right way and a wrong way to do impact fees, in my opinion. Everyone does it the wrong way. Everybody. Okay? The right way to do impact fees, and one of the reasons why is because the right way isn't really practical. Okay? The right way to do impact fees is to build the facility and then charge impact fees to pay yourself back for building the facility or to pay off the bond. Okay? Everyone does impact fees differently. Everyone says we're going to collect the impact fees first, we're going to plan our facilities, and we're going to collect the impact fees, and then once we have enough impact fees, then we're going to pay for the facility. Okay? To me, there is no way to fix the Impact Fee Act or to fix a impact fee facilities plan or anything like that to make that sustainable. In my personal opinion, doing that, you're just inviting lawsuits everywhere you go. And the reason why is because you are trying to predict the future when you're doing that. You're trying to predict growth patterns when you're doing that. You're trying to predict future costs when doing that. You're trying to predict where you're going to want the facilities, which, you don't always know where growth is going to happen. You might say, we're going to plant a park here, and then growth happens over here, right? And no matter what you do, I don't care how smart you are and how great your consultants are, no matter what you do, your attempts to predict the future are going to fail in some respect. And that failure of the attempt to predict the future is what leads to the lawsuit that you're going to lose. So, is it legal to do it that way? Yes. Do most people do it that way? Yes. Most places do it that way. If the economy is really crazy with building, that way might work, okay? But if the economy is just sluggish or if it's just normal, doing it that way presents tremendous amount of problems. However, if you have the wherewithal to build the facility either through bonding or through general funding, and you can build the facility, charge impact fees until happy days, until as it comes along, and pay yourself back until it's all fully paid up. And that works. So, you asked my feelings about impact fees, that's them. You have a bridge to nowhere either way you go, because the Impact Fee Act requires you to say what facilities you're planning, okay? And you have to be specific about that, okay? So you say in your Impact Fee Act, I'm planning a facility over here, and I start charging for that. Well, that could be a bridge to nowhere just as easily as anything. If you don't spend or encumber it within 6 years, you have to give the money back. And that never happens, right? Who's going to give money back? So
I'm sure as far as impact fees, there are elements in my community that have been hounding you recently. Yeah. But with those that might, what you might talk to them about how often you should review your impact fees, like how much you charge for different things.
And what's the answer to that question?
The answer to the question is that most communities, most city councils, which I think are the department and the city council have to go through and do that, and most of them haven't done it through many elective cycles.
The best advice that I have for you if you have impact fees, okay, is revise them every 5 years at the most, okay? If you don't complete redo, at least look at your predictions, find out what came true and what didn't come true, and make adjustments to come in line with what the reality is, at least every 5 years. More is better, okay? If I was the evil kind of attorney who was out looking for lawsuits to file, okay, one of the things that I would be looking for is anybody who's charging impact fees on a study that's more than 10 years old. If I found a study that was more than 10 years old, I would think this is a guaranteed win. I'm going to win this lawsuit against this community. Impact fees they're legal, they're allowed, and if you're a city, it may be the only way you have to pay for facilities and pay for new growth. That may be the only way. And you may be stuck in having to do it what I call the wrong way, and having to fight with that and taking the risk of a lawsuit. A lot of people have to do it, okay? If you're going to do that, at least follow the general basic guidelines. Do not use it only for facilities made necessary by growth. Do not use it for existing facilities, O&M, any of that kind of stuff. Make sure you're careful about your level of service calculations. Do not raise your level of service. Okay? And make sure you're charging it for a facility that is named in the Act as an available facility and that's named in your impact fee facilities plan. If you do those things, at least you're following the basic guidelines for impact fees. Impact fees are one of my favorite things. I get questions about them all the time. And you guys asking about it, I really appreciate, because I never get to express my feelings. So, those are them. Yes, sir.
You say to do it and then assess them, but what about a special service district or RDAs or special improvement districts? Isn't that a way where instead of, say, the whole city pays these impact fees, you isolate or isn't that a better way to do those?
Sometimes. A good way to think about it is this way, okay? Government raises revenue in two ways: taxes and fees. Okay? Taxes and fees. Taxes are taxes. Taxes are our way of just collecting money from you for however we want to collect it. Okay? And you forever, and you're stuck with that. And that's a power of government, is to tax people. Okay? The other way government raises revenue is through fees. But fees are very different than taxes in that fees can only really be cost recovery. You can only collect fees to pay for things that you had to spend. Okay? And impact fees are fees. okay? Which means that's why there's so many rules with them, okay? You have new growth, your new growth is creating impact, so we have to spend money to pay for that impact, so we're charging fees according to what we spent, okay? Which is another problem. If someone's been charging impact fees for more than 10 years for something, they've probably paid themselves back what they spent. And right now they're probably pocketing that money, which is illegal. You can't do that, okay? But if you're doing like a special service district or some other thing like that, okay, those are taxes, okay? And you can raise those and do whatever you want with those. And so, well, not whatever you want naturally, but so sometimes, yeah, that's a much better way to do it than impact fees. Sometimes it's better, and a lot of communities do this, just to pay it out of your good old general fund because you just don't want the headache of impact fees. That you can do that. Those are taxes. But fees can only ever be cost recovery. So you have to use them to recover your costs. So. Anything else? We're good? You have anything, Meg?
No, thank you for indulging the microphone.
Okay, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your questions. Please call my office if you have any more questions. That's what I do. That's what my staff does. Anything we can do to help you. I hope some of you have already taken advantage of that. I'm happy to help in any way I can.